Okay, welcome everyone to our monthly Wednesday webinar series with Feeling Good Institute. This month, we're presenting to you Don't Delay Anti-Procrastination CBT Strategies to Help You and Your Patients. Presented today by Richard Lam and Sue Kessner. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are at Feeling Good Institute and a little bit about myself, and then I'll introduce you to Richard and Sue. So let me take a moment to just give you a quick snapshot of what we're all about here at Feeling Good Institute and to share with you our mission to make a difference in people's lives through elevating the practice of therapy. Our story started with one big goal, which was really to make therapy better and to help people who are going through tough times. And we achieve this by training and certifying therapists in effective therapy techniques. We have clinics in California and New York, and we offer video therapy across the US and Canada. And we offer regular traditional therapy, kind of weekly hour-long sessions, as well as intensive therapy, where patients join us for several hours a day, several days per week in one-on-one therapy to kind of speed up their treatment. And now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about who I am as we get started today. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm also the director of training at the Feeling Good Institute. And I was originally trained by some of the world's most prominent CBT leaders in our field over on the East Coast. But my effectiveness as I think really dramatically increased when I started working with David Burns out here in California over 17 years ago. And the framework that he created, which is called TEAM-CBT, really changed the way that I practice. It taught me step by step how to make therapy really exceptionally effective. And so I feel really excited to share Dr. Burns's approach to CBT called TEAM-CBT with all of you in these monthly webinars. And if you'll share the next slide, Richard, just to let you all know, when I started learning from David Burns back in 2008, the only way you could get trained in TEAM-CBT was to learn directly from David at Stanford or to attend one of his intensives, 4-day intensives that would occur in different cities. And learning this model took really, honestly, years of training. And my colleagues and I have worked really hard over the years at Feeling Good Institute to develop a comprehensive therapist training program that helps you to become an excellent therapist in a fraction of the time. So on this slide, you can see the journey that we hope you might be interested in joining us on. And today you're joining us for a 1-hour free CE webinar. And we hope that maybe you'll join us in our next day-long workshop at the end of March, which we'll tell you about at the end of the hour, or maybe our asynchronous core skills training. And many of you also have continued training with us and joined us for the Fast Track to Level 3 course. So just kind of wanted to lay out a possible journey for you on this slide. And now I'll get into the content of today. So if you're here for your one free CE, then please make sure you stay till the end of the hour, and you will see in the chat box, we will drop the link for you to fill out your CE survey. So make sure you do that today. And then within a week, after you can watch the webinar and then complete your CE survey, within a week, you'll get your certificate of completion via email. So don't expect that today, but we'll send it out to you within the week. And then now I'm going to introduce your awesome presenters. So Richard Lam is here with us today, and Richard is a marriage and family therapist and a TEAM-CBT ambassador and educational speaker with the Feeling Good Institute. And Richard's clinical specialties include OCD, panic disorder, and relationship problems. And Richard also teaches TEAM-CBT to therapists worldwide and hosts the Feeling Good Therapist on YouTube, which provides helpful descriptions and role play demonstrations of various TEAM-CBT techniques. And we also have Sue Kessner with us. And Sue has been a licensed professional clinical counselor since 2014, and she has a really deep commitment to creating safe, compassionate spaces where clients feel truly heard and supported. Sue specializes in substance abuse, codependency, anxiety, depression, and supporting women through transitions. And she's a certified level 3 TEAM-CBT therapist. Sue has also spent many years as a school counselor in the Bay Area, giving her unique insight into the needs of diverse clients. And so now I'm going to turn you over to Richard.
Great. Thank you, Jill, for the introduction here. Hi everyone. I just want to share a really quick story just to better understand the topic for today and kind of understand who I am a little bit more. So, when I was a young therapist in grad school, I got very curious about this model of therapy called TEAM-CBT. And I got the opportunity to join a group at Stanford to learn more about it. And then I got this really amazing internship at the Feeling Good Institute, where I was supervised by Angela Crum. And I remember every supervision was amazing. I felt like I learned so much, and Angela helped me add so many tools to my toolkit. And she helped me really obtain my level 3 certification, and everything was going very smoothly. But then I attended one of my most memorable supervisions. Angela said to me that this is all I can teach you. And now you have to start teaching others because if you want to learn more, you have to start teaching because you start to learn the more you teach. And initially my internal thought process was, no, there's more that I can learn from her. I mean, there's so many tools and techniques out there I am not ready to teach. So really I did whatever it took to put off the teaching. And you'll learn more about tempting thoughts today, which kind of drive procrastination. And the tempting thoughts that I had were maybe next week, or maybe after I get my license, then I'll start teaching. Or I'll do it when I feel more ready. And these were the thoughts that really helped me procrastinate the teaching process. And then week after week of procrastinating, Angela finally asked me if I wanted to do something called a habit addiction log, which is something that you'll learn today. Some of the self-control thoughts that I came up with was teaching will help me learn more of the things I didn't know that I didn't know. And this is an opportunity where I can not only help others, but I can help myself grow as well. So there's a dual benefit. And then lastly, I had this thought is I always say later, but later really never comes. I'll start now. And I'm sure everyone knows how the story ends as I'm here teaching you today about procrastination. And I'm feeling really grateful because not only will I learn and grow in this process, but I'll also be able to teach you as well. So it's definitely going to be a collaborative process today. So I'd love to kind of hear a little more about your questions at the end, which will help me understand, especially if I feel stuck around it too. So that being said, here's a picture of me with David Burns right in the center here and some of my colleagues wearing this little silly Feeling Good Institute cape. Just thought I wanted to share the beginning of my process of becoming a TEAM-CBT therapist. So that being said, I just want to share a little bit more about the agenda today. So today we'll be learning about identifying tempting thoughts. And I'll go into more depth in each one as we go, or Sue will as well when she kind of covers the positive distortions. And then we'll be doing a demo of the devil's advocate technique today. And then followed by a really amazing vignette that Sue will be bringing to us to really consolidate the learning a bit more. And lastly, of course, definitely want to answer any of the questions that come up because I can imagine there might be a lot when it comes to this. So one of the things I want to kind of go over is when it comes to CEUs, we have learning objectives, and some of the ones that I want you to really familiarize yourself with or pay attention to rather is identifying tempting thoughts that drive procrastination and also applying the devil's advocate technique to challenge the distorted thoughts related to procrastination. So let's jump into procrastination a little bit. I feel like there's so many definitions when it comes to procrastination, and I just want us all to be on the same page today. So let's all use this universal definition of procrastination, which is the action of delaying or postponing something. So a few examples of that might be like putting off going to the gym or wasting time watching Reels or YouTube, TikTok, whatever it may be, putting off going to bed on time, saying you'll start work at 9, but not getting around to it until 10, or maybe even emails, my personal procrastination. So this is going to be our definition today. And I want you to remember this because our next slide will actually go over a poll today. So what I want you to look at is how often do you procrastinate? Personally, for me, I do procrastinate, so I'm definitely in this category here. It's very common. So I just want to know how common it is. So feel free to answer this. How often do you procrastinate? Not at all. Less than an hour daily, 1 to 5 hours daily, 5 to 10, or 10 plus hours daily. Let's take a moment while people answer this poll. And then I love this part because then we can sit in awkward silence.
I'm just running the poll, Richard. Sorry, I just had hid myself so I wasn't distracting people, but let me see, I can put myself back on here. Um,
You might need a spotlight, myself and Sue as
oh,
well.
did I just get rid of you guys? Okay, give me 1 second here, everybody. Hold on. Let me fix that. Okay. And let me end the poll and share the results with all of you today. Richard, can you see the results?
I can. Yeah, I love these results, and everyone can see it as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. So as you can see, wow, I'm very impressed by the 2% of people who put not at all. I wish I was in that category. But as you can see, the two top main categories are less than an hour daily or 1 to 5 hours daily, between 61 to 31%, which is actually fairly accurate when it comes to the data behind it. If we look into this data, you'll kind of see that when it comes to college students, a lot of them do believe that they're procrastinators, where 75% of them consider themselves procrastinators, while 80 to 95% admit to procrastinating at least occasionally. And when it comes to adults, and I'm imagining all of us here are adults, maybe not, but when it comes to the percentage here, about 20 to 25% of adults are chronic procrastinators. 42% of adults procrastinate often or daily. And at the end of the day, the time spent procrastinating is fairly accurate in terms of 1.59 hours when it comes to what we were looking at in terms of the data here. And on a yearly basis, what that estimates to is 55 days spent procrastinating on average. Just kind of think about that. That's kind of crazy, right? Like 55 entire days procrastinating here. So really the impact of this, especially when it comes to the workplace environment, is 88% of workers procrastinate for at least 1 hour daily. So just kind of keeping that in mind. That this is super common, something that I experience and the majority of people here experience as well. So that being said, now that we have a little bit of data behind this, I want to see a little bit more about what we can do about procrastination if you're wanting to help with it, of course. So that being said, we'll jump into identifying tempting thoughts and something called the HAL, which is the habit addiction log. And if you don't have a habit addiction log, that's totally fine. There's definitely alternatives where you can, well, let me explain this and I'll explain the alternative later. So with the habit addiction log, this is a picture of how it looks on the side here. And essentially what it is it kind of gives us a snapshot in time. And it's going to be really important that we identify moments where we struggle, where we're really not feeling like this is ideal. For example, if someone who's playing sports and they have, let's say, who's playing tennis and they have a coach, and the coach is going to identify the specific time when you didn't do things perfectly, so you can focus on improving that one moment. Very similarly, as we can use this to coach herself, where we have this habit addiction log where we identify the specific moment where things went wrong. And that's why the specific moment in time is so important. And the thing about this is we want to be very specific. So when I think about moment in time, maybe there's that moment right before, let's say at 9 a.m., I wanted to check my email and I have thoughts like, oh, I'll do this later. So that's a moment in time. But then maybe there's like 30 minutes later after I watch some YouTube videos and there's this different moment in time where I'm actually feeling bad and guilty of like, oh, I didn't watch it or I didn't check my email, rather I watched YouTube. So two very different moment in times. And generally the moment I want to focus on when it comes to the habit addiction log is that first one that I talked about. The moment where I feel tempted to avoid doing what I want to do, like checking my emails. So that's like the specific moment in time here. So after we identify the specific moment in time, there's a few things we have to do after that. One of the things is identifying emotions. And I find emotions to be very helpful to understand why we procrastinate. If you're feeling stressed, exhausted, or overwhelmed, of course you want to put that off, right? This kind of helps us understand this moment to a deeper level. And the thing about emotions is the habit addiction log isn't intended to change emotions. It's intended to change behavior. However, sometimes there is an indirect change that kind of comes with it, or some sort of correlation that comes with it too, where when you change your behavior, sometimes you feel better, but it's not guaranteed. Just kind of putting it out there so everyone's aware of what this is intended for. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about what's the difference between a tempting thought and a negative thought. I think oftentimes people are fairly familiar with what a negative thought is. Thoughts like I'm a loser, or I'm not a good therapist, or I'm so dumb for checking or not checking my email and focusing on YouTube, right? These are thoughts that put us down, make us feel negative and not so great. However, what a tempting thought is these are thoughts that has like a call to action. It's telling you to do something. For example, it might be something like, oh, you can do this later. And generally what comes from this is it kind of gives me some sort of relief or a positive emotion. And the intent of the tempting thoughts are it kind of helps with moving you towards a different behavior that you're wanting. So that's kind of like the difference between the two. And we'll go over a few examples of what that look like so people kind of understand a little bit more. So, oh great, I just kind of covered this a little bit. So relief or positive feeling. So a big part of this is when you do the tempting thoughts, generally it does kind of get to relief or positive feelings. So let's kind of get into some of the more, well, rather, there's one thing I mentioned that I kind of promised you guys in the beginning here is this is the habit addiction log. However, if you don't have this, that's totally fine. If you want to buy it, you can reach out to David Burns at the Feeling Good website. But if not, a different variation that sometimes I use when I don't have it in front of me is I just write down like, oh, what happened and what are the emotions that come up, and I write down the emotions and followed by writing down some of the tempting thoughts, and that'll kind of help me get started with kind of shifting things and then create more self-control thoughts as well. Fairly simple to kind of write things down, so it's not 100% needed that you need this form. However, it's very convenient. Got to put that out there. So that being said, let's jump over to some of the common tempting thoughts. So that'll be something like, oh, I can do this tomorrow, or oh, that's too overwhelming, or I'll do it after I watch one more reel, one more TikTok, one more Instagram post, or I'll do it when I feel more motivated, or one more day can't hurt, or only 5 more minutes, then I'll get started, or I deserve a break after a long day, I can start later, or I'll do it right after I do the dishes, even though that's productive. So there's so many different um, tempting thoughts that we have. And one thing that I want to turn over to you, make this a little more collaborative. I'd love to learn a little bit more about different tempting thoughts. So how about we kind of open it up and feel free to send some of your tempting thoughts over to Jill in the chat, and she'll kind of read some out to me. So not only can I learn a little bit more about tempting thoughts, but everyone else as well. So feel free to do that now.
So I am looking at the chat now, and you're all going to send me your own unique tempting thoughts, or you can share tempting thoughts of your patients as well. And I will start reading. I won't be able to get them all, but I got one. I can do this tomorrow. Tracy was
That's my
talking about
favorite.
her invoicing. I just can't do this right now. I'm too exhausted. This is hard. I am free to do it whenever I want. I love these. I'm not sure how to do it. I'm too tired to do it now. I'll rest first. You have time to do it later. I'm too tired. I'll take a break first. It'll be okay. I can just figure it out later. Let me just see any new ones. Today is ruined, so I might as well just start fresh tomorrow. I can do it when I feel like it. I work so hard. I deserve this time. I can do it when I have more energy. I don't have to do it now. How's that, Richard?
Yeah, I love it. I'm just smiling along the way because as you're reading it, I'm like, oh my God, I had these, like all of these. So it's fairly common, right? I can imagine as Jill's reading it off, a lot of us kind of relate to it. Like, oh my God, I had these thoughts before. So as you can see, it's fairly common for a lot of us to experience these. So thank you, Jill, for reading those out to us there. And thank you everyone for contributing your tempting thoughts there. So let's kind of go over a little bit more about what we would do next after a habit addiction log. And generally, what I like to do is understand a little bit of the goal. I like to determine what our goal is. They might come in because they're saying, I want to help with procrastination, but what exactly is the goal? If they're if the more specific we are with the goal, the more likely we'll be able to be successful. It's kind of like if someone tells you, oh, you should work out next week. I'm probably not going to work out next week, but if someone tells me, hey, you have to work out next week at 9 a.m. and you're going to do 10 minutes on the elliptical, I'm more likely to do that. It's very specific. So a big part of this is some of the questions you might think to yourself is how often will this be? Or how long will you be doing it? Or what will you be doing? And it'll help us be very specific so that goal is achievable. And the reason why I like doing this is there is a sense of accountability that comes with it. So if our patient is kind of telling us this is our specific goal and we want to accomplish this, now they're going to stick to that. And they're like, I have to achieve this one specific thing. So they'll kind of come in knowing there's a bit of accountability from their therapist. But not only that, but having a specific goal will actually help us understand the resistance of the goal a little bit more. For example, if I wanted to work out in the morning, one of my resistances would be I don't like the cold. It's very cold in the morning, and that's why I'm not going to do it at 9 a.m. So that's kind of like one of the things that we won't cover today. However, one thing I highly recommend is on um, David and Jill will go over a lot about the resistance work, and you'll be learning skills like the triple paradox to address resistance to certain habits as well. And one of the things they'll talk about is a little more about the goal and habit addiction log and everything all together. So this is a little bit of a snippet if you want to kind of, if you're interested in learning more about habits. So just kind of putting that out there. That being said, let's talk a little bit more about identifying distortions. So I'll pass it over to my lovely co-host Sue, who will tell us a little more about identifying distortions.
Thank you, Richard. We're going to focus now on identifying positive distortions, as Richard said, and these mirror the list of negative distortions that we are probably all familiar with if we're familiar with the work of Dr. Burns. Remembering that negative distortions work to maintain depression and anxiety, but what you might not be familiar with is that positive distortions maintain problems with habits like procrastination. So negative distortions are a faulty way of thinking that make us feel worse, and positive distortions make us feel good and offer relief, at least initially. They lead us to making choices that push us toward unwanted behaviors, behaviors that we later come to regret. This tempting way of thinking gives us a false sense of relief, generally leading to actions that we really don't want to be taking. In this technique, we start by introducing the concept of positive distortions to clients, and we ask them to identify the positive distortions that are driving their procrastination. When they start to realize that their procrastination is based on distorted thinking, they are better able to change their thinking. So let's look at the list here in front of us. First of all, we have all or nothing thinking, where you view the world in black and white terms or all and nothing. So your example of that might be, I can't do it now. It has to be the perfect time. We might also do overgeneralization, where you think about a positive event as a never-ending pattern of success. For example, I've done it before, so I can do it again. You're in a mental filter, you dwell on the positives and ignore the negative consequences. So an example of that might be the last time I put something off, I still did a good job, so I'm sure it will be fine this time. In discounting the negative, you tell yourself that negative facts don't count, and this helps you maintain a universally positive self-image. So an example of that might be, I've been putting it off for a while, but I always work better under pressure, so it's not a big deal. Then we come to jumping to conclusions, which are in two parts, mind reading and fortune telling. In mind reading, you make assumptions about how other people are thinking and feeling. For example, you may assume that other people don't have to struggle with temptation to put things off. Although what we saw from the poll is that many people struggle with this temptation to put things off. and fortune telling, where you make an unrealistic positive prediction about the future. For example, I'll get everything done in time, no problem. Next slide. We also go into magnification or minimization. In magnification, you either blow the positives out of proportion or shrink them. For example, I'm taking a break right now, and taking a break right now will make me feel so much better. Emotional reasoning, where you base your view of reality on what you're feeling. For example, I deserve a rest, and I feel like I deserve a rest, so it's okay to put things off for now. Should statements. You use should statements to increase the desire to procrastinate. I should wait until I feel more motivated to work. Or hidden should statements, where you might say, I need rest because I've been working so hard lately, and taking a break will help me refocus later. So the last one is labeling. And this is where you attach a positive label to yourself to justify your procrastination. You might say, I'm a perfectionist, so I need to wait for the ideal moment to dive into a task. I
Well,
also wanted to thank Marina Dyke and Tyann Trong for some of these wonderful examples.
lovely. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Marina or oh man, now I'm like slipping. Well, who was the two
Got it.
again? It was
Tyann
Tyann
and
and
Marina,
Marina.
yes.
Yeah, two of one of my favorite teachers out there. And I think one of the lovely part of it is um, being part of the team community really helps us connect to a greater degree. And I think I remember this thread kind of going on a little bit in the listserv. So one of the amazing things is we can connect a little bit more in terms of helping each other through email and on this listserv. So one of the many benefits when it comes to being part of the certification program as well. So thank you, Sue, for kind of bringing this to life here and kind of sharing with us these positive distortions. That being said, let's jump over to the devil's advocate technique, one of my favorites. I love role play techniques. So this is going to be a role play technique, and it's kind of like the in our childhood, you kind of remember those cartoons with the angel and devil on your shoulder, these like angel devil versions of you, and the angel will be telling you to like do good things, and the devil will be tempting you to do like bad things. And in this role play, what's going to happen and how I like to present it is this we're going to be playing that version of the devil tempting them. However, the angel is actually on vacation, so it's up to you to fight back against that devil. And there's definitely two roles in this one, and for our patients, they'll be playing the role themselves while we play that little devil version of them, tempting them using the tempting thoughts that we've came up with together on the habit addiction log, or a variation of the habit addiction log, of course. And so what we'd be doing is tempting them to kind of do the behavior that they don't want to do. And this is a very paradoxical approach. And a lot of therapists will be more tempted to like help their patients overcome their addiction rather than use their temptations to tempt them to do the behavior. And a big part of this is by actually trying to cheerlead them or kind of encourage them to do the behavior. It actually does the opposite, it creates more resistance for them. One thing that comes to mind for me is it's like when you're not feeling well and you had a bad day and you go to your partner and you're like telling them about what's going on and they offer help. The first thing is, I'm not going to take your help. And you just want to vent and kind of understand a little more. And I think a big part of this is, and what you'll learn at the workshop again, is it comes with a lot of empathy and connection at first before we use this more paradoxical approach and using this technique. So just kind of remembering that this comes with a lot of empathy beforehand and also throughout as well, this entire process of the connections with our patients. So that being said, I just wanted to talk about self-control thoughts and the importance of writing it down. And the importance of writing it down is research shows that writing things down or typing things down is a way to kind of help internalize the learning process. And that's why when we go to school, we're always typing things down or writing things down because it helps ingrain that memory, something about the physical and the mental connection that kind of helps us with the learning process here. So that being said, I do want to do a demonstration today, but one of the things I want to talk about is an example. So this is a variation of a habit addiction log that I have for myself here. And how this works is I'll just go over this with you, and then Sue will be playing a person who is essentially procrastinating on her taxes. So this is very similar to what we talked about is I'm going to have that tempting event. So Saturday morning planning to do taxes at maybe like 9 a.m. or something. And one of the things is they're feeling tempted. So I bolded it, but sometimes if you're writing it down, you can circle it. Tempted, stressed, overwhelmed, burdened, uninterested, turned off, unhappy, nervous, alone, and pessimistic. It's a lot of negative emotions coming up here. And one of the things that you'll see is these percentages and what these percentages represent in the percent before is in that moment, how tempted were they feeling? And in this situation, they were feeling 90% tempted out of 100. So each one will kind of help us understand a little bit more. And will also help us with identifying a little bit more of the tempting thoughts too. And as you can see, these tempting thoughts are very similar to the ones that we came up with in terms of the very common ones, but also some really tailored to the taxes specifically. For example, I can do my taxes later. I have all weekend, or it's going to be so much work. I can just take a 15-minute break before I start. And I worked so hard all week, I deserve a break on the weekend, and I'll start Monday. I feel motivated to do it later today, so I'll wait till then. And it doesn't matter too much if I finish it now, I can do it later. And these are all tempting thoughts that came up in this example here of the avoiding the taxes. And most importantly, I do want to go over the percentages here because oftentimes people who are familiar with a mood log would put a percentage on how true each one of these thoughts are. However, the percentage here actually represents how tempting it is. For example, if someone ever gave me a tempting thought of ice cream is just so good, you should just have one bite. And honestly, for me, that's true. You're not going to convince me that ice cream's disgusting. I love ice cream. So there's no way to really change that for me. However, the temptation is what I'm looking at, the percentage of the temptations that tempt me towards ice cream. And very similarly is when there's a lot of temptations towards procrastination, we're looking at these percentages in terms of how tempting is it to procrastinate when it comes to these tempting thoughts. So that being said, Sue, are you feeling ready to kind of dive in with me for this demonstration?
Absolutely.
Great, let's go for it. So, Sue, I'm so glad that you're coming in today. I know you've been putting off the taxes for such a long time now. And most recently on Saturday, I know you were planning to do it. And Saturday morning, you were planning to do the taxes. And I know a lot has come up for you in terms of all these emotions and all the tempting thoughts that we've captured. And I have a really awesome technique that I want to tell you about today and see if you want to do. Is it okay if I share a little bit more about this technique?
Sure.
So this technique is called the devil's advocate technique. And how it will work is it's a role play technique. But don't worry, you get a really easy role. You just play yourself, Sue. So you're Sue. And for me, I'm going to be playing, you know, in those cartoons, like an angel and devil on your shoulder. I'm going to be playing that little devil version of you on your shoulder. And I'm going to tempt you using all the tempting thoughts that we come up with on this habit addiction log. But the thing is, you don't have the help of the angel because the angel's on vacation. So your job, exactly. So your job is actually to fight back against this devil version of you. So that way you can create more of the self-control thoughts. And the reason why we do this is because if you can defeat these tempting thoughts now, you're more likely to be able to do it on your own later and to really reinforce those self-control thoughts to kind of create the ability to fight against the procrastination. Is this something that you'd be willing to try with me, Sue?
I sure will. Yeah.
Wonderful. But before we begin, I just wanted to clarify, in this role play, who am I again?
You're the devil. with the template.
Exactly. I'm that little devil version of you. And who are you?
I'm myself. I'm Sue.
You got it. You ready?
Yep.
Well, Sue, you can do the taxes later. You have all weekend.
That's what you told yourself last time, and your taxes didn't get done, and you had to pay a fine. So better get them done now.
I love that. Who won this interaction? Me, the devil, or you, Sue?
I think I won it.
I think so too. Was it like a small win or big win?
A big win.
Great. Big or huge?
I think big.
Big. Great.
Do even
So
better.
yeah, well, let's kind of capture that here. And of course, we can aim for a huge win. Did you want to try that again, or would you prefer to just write this down as of right now? We can come back to it later using some other techniques.
Let's do this and keep moving. Write
Great.
down.
And then let's remind Sue to use the I when she responds.
That's right. So definitely use the I version of it, right? Because you're fighting against me, the devil. So of course, Sue, I would want you to write this down as well in the self-control thought. And then the percent belief, we can put a percent belief, but generally I like to kind of just write small, big, or huge so I have an idea of what's going on. So we can just write big here if you wanted to. And then lastly, I'm wondering, after creating the self-control thought, how tempting is it now in this percent after box here? How tempting is I can do my taxes later. I have all weekend after we created the self-control thought.
Maybe 20%.
Yeah, 20%. Wonderful. We kind of decreased it significantly from 100 to 20%. And the intent of this habit addiction log is actually to decrease the temptations enough so that way we can still do the behavior that we want to do. Right. So I love that we decreased it. Are you ready to try the next one with me, Sue?
Sure.
It's going to be so much work. You can just take a 15-minute break before you start.
15-minute breaks stretch to half-hour breaks, and suddenly an hour has gone by. I'd better start now.
Who won that one? Me or you?
I did.
Yeah, small or big?
Big,
Big or huge?
huge.
Wonderful. I love that. Let's write that down, right? Write it down the self-control thought, and then we'll write huge here. And how tempting is it now that it's going to be so much work and I can just take a 15-minute break before I start?
Oh, maybe 10%.
Lovely. Let's put 10% on the percent after here. You ready to try one more?
Sure.
Great. But you worked so hard all week. You definitely deserve a break on the weekend. You can start on Monday.
If I start on Monday, I'm only going to have one day to prepare. That's not enough time. I'd better start now.
Lovely. I like that. Who won? You or me?
Me.
Small or big?
Big.
Big or huge?
Huge.
Wonderful. And we'll write that down in the self-control thought, capture the huge right here, the percent belief. And what about the percent after? How tempting is this now for you, Sue?
It's maybe 10% again.
Wonderful. That's lovely. We're decreasing the temptations quite a bit. Well, let's pause right there. Thank you, Sue, for such an amazing demonstration today and kind of showing how this would kind of play out in terms of a demonstration. And one of the things I want to highlight is, as you can see, we captured the distortions here. We captured the percent belief, self-control thought, and kind of like the after percentages of the temptation. And then after we do all the tempting thoughts, and I'm just not doing it today just for the sake of time, however, after we completed that, we'd actually go back up here in the percent after. We start rating how tempting and how stressed or how uninterested they're feeling now. And remember, the intent of this is actually to change behavior. So maybe the temptations might decrease. However, the stress, uninterested, nervous, unhappiness might actually stay the same, or sometimes they might increase too. And so, or sometimes they decrease. So a big part of this is, remember, this habit addiction log is intended to change behavior, not emotion. So that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Sue, who will help us understand a little bit more of everything that we learned today and in a case example. So I'll pass it over to you, Sue.
Thanks, Richard. I've been working with Lisa, who is a 17-year-old high school student. She's a high school senior, and she has applied to a lot of colleges and found herself with 4 college applications that she had to submit by Monday. And the situation is that it was Friday afternoon. She came home from school and she was confronted by a pile of applications. And she was anxious and tired and unmotivated. And her thoughts came up immediately like, I can do my applications later. I have all weekend. And if I just take a nap now, I'll feel more like doing them later on this afternoon or evening. So we did several techniques. I talked about the habit and addiction log and identifying distortions, and we went over the positive distortions. And we also did the devil's advocate technique that you just saw us demonstrate. And then I taught her little steps for big feats, which is basically putting things into small, doable, bite-sized steps. And there's also anti-procrastination sheet, which we don't have time to go into now, but if you come on March 28th to the Habits and Addiction workshop that Jill and Dr. Burns are going to be doing, there'll be more information on that then. But all of these helped her a great deal. And I think next slide, Richard. So what she decided to do was, in terms of her tempting thoughts, she came up with self-control thoughts. So when she was feeling, I'm so tired, I just need a little nap, I'll start on my applications after dinner, she turned that around to, it probably won't happen that way. Naps have a habit of stretching out. If I put it off, chances are I won't do it. I better start now. Then she had the tempting thought of, I worked so hard at school all week, I deserve a break on the weekend. And she realized if I wait till Sunday night to start, I'll have only a couple of hours to do my applications. A couple of hours is not enough time. I better start now. And she had a goal that we worked on of doing 2 hours of college applications each day from 4 to 6 p.m. So it was a very specific, doable, actionable goal.
Lovely. Thank you, Sue, for such an amazing example. As you can see, with this case example with Lisa, very similar to what a lot of us experience, and maybe even some of your kids or something that you've experienced before when you were applying to grad school or undergrad. And I'm just on this page on resources now, and there's a lot of wonderful resources, but the top 2 that I can think of is The Feeling Great by David Burns. A lot of good work, a lot of good stuff in there in terms of not only dealing with habit, but relationship and also mood stuff like anxiety and depression. And another one that really helps specifically in terms of habits, and some of you might have read this book, I find that it's a really helpful book, is something called Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And of course, there's a few research articles or more data when it comes to a little more of habits and anti-procrastination, or rather procrastination. And so feel free to utilize these resources here. That being said, we're kind of jumping over to some Q&A, one of my favorite parts of this, to kind of learn more and also to answer any of your questions, because I know we covered a lot today, so I can imagine quite a bit of questions. So that being said, I'll pass it over to Jill to read off some questions for us.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, I have tons of questions, more unfortunately than I think that we will have time for today. So I already have them compiled. I'll start actually with the topic that addresses several questions people had, which I know is near and dear to your heart, Richard, which has to do with motivation. So there were a couple comments, things like, oh, Sue's not really a procrastinator. This was too easy for her. Or, what happens if, someone isn't able to defeat the tempting thought, or if it's a small win, I'm sort of compiling them all together, Richard, and then you don't have to answer everything, but this idea of motivation, right? What if, your patient says, I'm too tired to do this, or they kind of aren't able to talk back to the tempting thought.
Yeah, I love that. So, the first thing that I think about is the resistance, right? The amount of resistance to kind of get to the methods. And oftentimes I want to do really good resistance work in terms of maybe the triple paradox, externalization of resistance, and really address like, do they really want the change? Do they want to have this outcome that they're looking for? And also something called process resistance. Would they be willing to do the hard work involved to kind of get to where they want to be? And if I've already done those two, of course, some of the things I would do in the devil's advocate technique is to actually highlight or be more paradoxical. When I mean highlight is I highlight something that they mentioned before. Like, I remember this is what you said before of that this is something that brings you a lot of pain when you push it off and it makes you even more stressful. Is that something you want to add? Or a different variation would be even more paradoxical and be like, hey, it kind of makes sense to feel relaxed. You had such a hard day at work, so maybe it doesn't make sense to actually change this behavior at all. And both paths can kind of push towards change. Alternatively, there's another thing that we can do. I know I'm answering a lot here, but alternatively, another thing is we can use other techniques as well. The accountability step, stimulus control, little steps to big feats, anti-procrastination, problem solution log. So there's so many different variations of techniques that you'll be learning a lot of if you wanted to join more of the habit workshop. However, this is just one of the snippets, right? I wish I could share a lot more, but within this hour, it's so hard to teach everything all at once. So I hope that answers
Yeah,
that question.
you
Was there
touched
any
on a
more?
lot of things, and I will just highlight there's kind of the category of motivation, which we have other methods and strategies to address. And there's also the category of behavioral interventions. And so, just so everybody understands when they walk away, what we presented in these, let's say, 45 minutes of talking is by no means a comprehensive model for treating habits and addictions. This is like a taste of a few methods, identifying positive distortions and tempting thoughts and using the devil's advocate technique. We have so many methods that we all use when we work with people with habits and addictions, and they're all super important. So people also, the questions that came up frequently, people actually found it very interesting, this concept of positive distortions as being different than negative distortions. Some people said, oh, wow, I never heard of this. And then people also asked again for maybe a definition of a positive distortion. So, and something I'll add is, so a lot of people also said, what if my patient has negative thoughts? Like, I can't do this. That's might be a tempting thought, but there might also be some negative thoughts, right, that drive their procrastination, or anxious thoughts that drive their procrastination. And I'll just answer my own question briefly, just to, because there's lots of other questions I'll throw at you guys, which is we do oftentimes fill out like a daily mood log with a patient or a thought record, however you want to call it, where we'll write down patients' negative thoughts as well. Or someone said they had a thought like, I'm too lazy, or I'm not good at anything. They could function as tempting thoughts. They're often negative thoughts that drive negative emotions that then also contribute to procrastination. So lots of times we'll help patients to see the negative thoughts and work on a daily mood log and lots of cognitive therapy techniques, as well as the kind of positively distorted tempting thoughts. And help them to see both and help them to work on them, in two different ways. And it's kind of there's a synergy there where you're helping them kind of target two different processes. Sue, did you want to add something to that? Oh, you're muted
Oh,
though.
you're muted.
I just wanted to say that that's something that I did recently with a client who was procrastinating about making up a to-go bag after she was in the LA fires. And she was quite concerned with how much she was procrastinating. And we did do the daily mood log initially, as well as the habit and addiction log. And it was very helpful to her. And I also wanted to say that when I was doing the role play, even though it is just a role play and pretend, the more I put it in the I voice, the stronger I feel about it, and the more it's likely that I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, I love that. Also wanted to make the comment that we got lots of people saying, oh, I think this will be really helpful for my patients who have ADHD. And then some people asking very sophisticated questions about ADHD, which we're not going to answer today simply because we don't have time. Lots of people asking, oh my, telling me patient vignettes and things like that, which again, unfortunately, we're not going to have time to address, although it might be fun to do a full Q&A about that, the overlap of OCD and perfectionism and procrastination and things like that. But just to know, we certainly respect that there may be lots of things going on when someone procrastinates, and we would definitely address those other aspects as well, like perfectionism or, kind of the whole OCD cycle that could definitely cause someone to just think it has to be perfect and therefore they put things off. Let me ask you, let's see. Oh, there was a question that says, are these strategies only for procrastination, or could you also apply them to other behaviors like overeating, other kinds of addictions?
That's a great question. And I think, this specifically is focusing on procrastination, but if you will come to the habit and addiction workshop, you're going to hear how it can be used with overeating, with gambling, with drinking, over drinking or drugging. You'll see how it can be used for all these ways of having habits and addictions.
Absolutely.
One thing I just want to add to it can even be certain habits that people don't even notice that much. I remember someone came to me, they were someone who presents and teaches quite a bit, and they wanted to get rid of the habit of using the word which is really challenging and difficult, but it was something that we used the habit addiction log to help overcome and to present with a lot of pauses, so there's no more However, I'm not perfect, so I'm going to have a lot of ums today, just putting that out there. I haven't done my habit addiction log.
I am getting lots of questions that say, when is the habit addiction workshop? Good question. I'm going to share a slide with you in just a moment, but it's on March 28th, and I'll share a slide with you and tell you how you can register for it too. There, now I'm going to be really self-conscious with my ums, Richard. But it can be so helpful with so many habits. I'm helping people with decreasing their doom scrolling, which seems to be coming up so much, their media use, they're not going to sleep on time, they're sleeping too late, etc. Let me see what else is here. Now I'm gonna be so self-conscious all day today with my ums, Richard. Isn't it true? Isn't it sometimes true that someone does need a rest? How do you help people discern between distorted thoughts and good judgment? Like if someone says, but I need a rest, how can we help them to figure out, is this something that they want to change, need to change or not?
I can take this one if you don't mind to, or if you wanted to.
That's fine, Richard.
Well, I think a big part of this is it kind of comes with the talk of the goal, right? Part of this is if we just push ourselves to accomplish as much as we can, we kind of surpass quite a bit and we might be doing something very unhealthy. But if we have a set goal, very specific, and we're going to do it for this amount of time, for this amount of period, then we are able to determine how healthy this will be and kind of help talk it out together. And one of the things I personally like, I'm not sure if this will be part of the habit addiction workshop, but it's the decision-making form. And it's something that helps us list the pros and cons of so many different things. And it kind of helps calculate everything to kind of help us better understand if this is good for us or not. And of course, with each person, we can't tell them exactly what is healthy and what's not healthy, but we can do that based off of their values and what's important to them.
Perfect. And yeah, I think all these methods that we teach people are a little bit out of context. And of course, this is a method we would use after doing good evaluation and empathy and really understanding a patient's goals. And, if we have a patient who's just sleep deprived and we're not just, then we might be questioning, right? Well, is this a time where it would make more sense for you to take a nap? Or, do you need to be getting more sleep in order to be more productive, right? So we'll think through those things with people. But once someone set a goal, right? Like from 5 to 6 p.m., I want to be doing my taxes each night this week until I'm completely finished. then in that moment, if they're like, oh, I'd rather take a nap, that's clearly a tempting thought, right? So it's amazing how people can, find things to do when they're trying to get something done. And in those moments, most of those things are not really self-care. They're really just distraction and temptation, and they pull us away from the things that we really want to get done.
And
But I feel
suddenly,
like that, like, oh, but shouldn't I trust my body? Seems like it could be a tempting thought. Now, of course, in some other contexts, it could be something you absolutely want to help your patient to do, right? To trust themselves more. Would
and
you say so?
suddenly doing housework might seem like a good idea, you know.
Absolutely. Someone said, I'm trying to identify which positive thought or positively distorted thought I have when procrastinating, but I don't think it's any of them. I just feel just another moment and then I'll start. I'm actually worried there's not enough time to finish the job. Can you help me understand and suggest what to do? Well, that sounds to me like a tempting thought, don't you guys think?
I think so too. I think you might have answered your own question there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Let me share with people the next couple slides before the webinar is over, including how you can get your CE credit. But this is the workshop people have been asking about. Dave and I will be offering the CBT for healthier habits and lasting change for you and your patients. So today we just gave you a little snapshot about a couple strategies for procrastination, but we'll be talking about other kinds of unhealthy or unhelpful habits and a whole variety of cognitive, behavioral, and motivational methods that you can use to help your patients. So it's 7 hours and 7 CE credits live online, and it's from 8:30 to 4:30 Pacific time. So adjust that to your time zone. And if you register today, you can use this code that says lasting change to get an additional $30 off the discounted price. So you can register at cbt-workshop.com. And let's go to the next slide. I want to remind people that to get your CE credit, just complete the survey that's in the chat box right now. Just complete that CE survey, and we'll send you your certificate of completion within a week. And let's go to the next slide. So we'll be ending as promised on time. I just want to say thank you first to the presenters here. Thank you to Richard and Sue. You both did a really great job, and we definitely appreciate your expertise and sharing with us today. And thanks to everyone else who joined us today. We hope that you found it valuable to you and that it provided you with some practical tools, just kind of scratching the surface with some of your patients. Also, if you know of people who could benefit from our services at Feeling Good Institute, whether that's a friend or a family member or a client, you can see therapists who are available on our website. And if you have questions or feedback for Richard or Sue or myself, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We're here to support you with your training and your therapy work in any way that we can. And we hope that you guys have a wonderful day.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. We'll pay attention to the chat box. Mike has put the CE survey in there a whole bunch of times. So I'm just going to stick on for another minute here until we hit 1 o'clock Pacific time, just to make sure you guys all grab that link in the chat box. And we hope to see you all soon at another training. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.